Hello and welcome back once again to the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. This is episode 181. John and Wendy talk to Mandy Johnson. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Wendy. How are you, John?
Wendy, I am well, kind of off cycle for us for this episode. Excited, though, that this is being sponsored once again by our friends, our new friends at an old face at Namely. Really excited to be continuing that relationship with Namely throughout the month.
Very much. So excited to be back with them. I think we've got a lot of great stuff planned for the month, and I'm glad that they get to be a part of it. Amazingly
enough, we're at a point where not only are we fortunate to be sponsored by others, we are at a point where we are sponsoring things now.
Yes.
I know you want to share. This is a super cool thing that we're getting to do.
Yeah, I am very pumped that to share that we are going to be a sponsor at DisruptHR in Brookings. We're excited to bring it back, get together with people, and we decided that we're going to have it outside so we can be a little bit safer. Being outside in September in South Dakota means it can be a little bit hot, so I decided to throw HR Social Hour in as a sponsor for water. So the girls and I will get some HR Social Hour stickers and switch out the bottled water from Walmart, throw our own sticker on it, and we are going to be one of our sponsors for DisruptHR. Y'all know I'm a huge proponent of DisruptHR. I've been doing it here in South Dakota this will be our fourth one, and maybe someday we'll get John out here to participate in South Dakota's Disrupt.
I'm a huge fan of Disrupt. I'm really glad that we were able to do this small token of giving back to a part of our community. We've talked about water so much lately as it seems to be in everybody's bottle, cup, glass these days. It only seemed appropriate. Sadly, it's not the Social Hour Ale. You never know. That might be down the road.
Someday.
We will have links in the show notes to get registered for that event in Brookings. So if you're in the area, wherever it may be, and you want to get your Disrupt fix, here's your chance. And hopefully you'll join Wendy and the Disrupt gang and get a bottle of water as a keepsake, if anything else.
Oh, exactly. You know, it lasts forever, according to those that look at recycling, right? So, but September 2nd, 4:30 p.m. is when we will be getting everything kicked off. So, yeah, if you're in the area, would love to see you there.
Wendy half jokingly said a little bit earlier, we are recording with someone in the future, and we have been so incredibly fortunate to expand our community and our world literally with guests from all over. And so Mandy is joining us from Australia. I think she's in competition with, there's one other person. I think they were recording in New Zealand at some point. I'm still not real clear where they were. However, Mandy's starting her day with us. So it is the future there. No more talk. Let's make the introduction and get started.
So excited to welcome Mandy Johnson to the show. She is a best-selling business author and advisor and the former co-founder and director of the UK operation of global travel giant Flight Centre. One of only a handful of Australians to present at the Asia Pacific Talent Conference, Mandy has also been interviewed for her innovative business ideas on media such as Sky Business News, the ABC, and Qantas in-flight radio. Mandy's mission is to make work better for everyone, and her latest essay on the future of work now features as an introduction to Wiley's Australian and New Zealand high school textbook. Mandy, welcome to the show. So excited to have you with us. We've been getting to know you for a while now, but our first question always, what is in your glass?
I'd like to say it's an espresso martini, Wendy, but it's only 6 a.m. in the morning here, so it's really a pretty boring apple and ginger tea at the moment just to wake me up.
Well, if it was espresso, wouldn't that be good for a morning pick-me-up?
Yeah, I just thought about the martini bit.
A component of it, at least, right? A component of that drink would be. Well, Mandy, again, we just cannot thank you enough. We have been working together to figure out time zones and make this thing happen. We have you here now. Of course, we always ask what's in your glass, but then, how exactly did you get your start in human resources?
I call myself the accidental HR person because it really started, I was working as a store leader in Flight Centre, and I went to a conference and I had too many drinks. I'm sure no one who's listening has ever had too many drinks at a conference.
Ever. At an HR event or any event? No.
Never. I went to the bar and I ran into the CEO of the company there, and apparently I told him that the way that the company trained and recruited people was absolutely rubbish. And apparently I went on about this in quite long and lengthy detail that I have absolutely no memory of. A few days later, he rang me and I thought, oh my God, for sure he's going to sack me. But instead he said, Mandy, if you think you know so much about this people's stuff, then you can start up what he called it, our first people works area. And that's what I did. And I had no training for this at all. You know, I think I recruited about 3 people at the time, and I'd done a journalism degree. That was about as useful as wet tissue paper. But I do believe that success is just a measure of improvement. And so I just kept improving stuff and fumbled my way through.
That is the best how I got into HR story ever. I'm going to guess there's probably some of us that wanted to do that.
Well, it could have gone the other way. You could have sacked me. So I'm not quite sure if I would recommend it to HR people as a career boosting move.
Yeah. You got the right person at the right time, I think, for sure, for that to work. Love it. Since then, you've gotten to learn about talent attraction. And so you've been speaking extensively on attraction, retention, and you even wrote a book on the topic. How has the last 18 months affected hiring with your client base, and how are you helping them navigate the labor shortage?
Okay, well, over here, I don't know how much you kind of know what's happening in Australia, but the government shut the borders. So Australia relies heavily on international, like backpackers and workers coming in. And so we're about 200,000 workers down. So we've got this massive, massive labour shortage. My clients are totally distraught. You know, I had a guy ring me last week. He was a builder. And he'd had 4 of his best project managers poached in a week. So lost 4, straight away. I've got manufacturing clients. And because of COVID, everyone wants to do their manufacturing in the country now. But, of course, they just can't get people. Probably the worst I've ever seen. Dairy farmers here, same thing. I had a woman sobbing the other day because, she's just got 3 kids and her and her husband are doing all the milking because they just can't get people. So it's pretty dire, and everyone's, I think the good thing, the upside of this is that because people are being forced to innovate, it is making work better for everyone. And just to give you an example, the manufacturer I was talking to, I suggested to her to try and set up her business the way that people prefer to work. So what she did was she now opens her warehouse from 7 in the morning from 5 in the morning till 7 at night. And her people can come and do their 8-hour shift any time in that day. And so instantly she employed 13 people the following week after she'd done that, because people could decide, oh, look, today my kid's playing footy after school, so come in the morning. Or if they'd had a big night out the night before, they'd come in from 12 till 8. So, it gives people that flexibility that they like. So in some ways, it's kind of forcing employers to be more flexible. And I think, from that point of view, it's actually quite a good thing. But it's we are in pretty serious straits here if that border doesn't reopen, pretty soon.
What does that look like, Mandy, in terms of we are seeing a lift again, new versions of coronavirus that are popping up and causing a lot of issues, even for many that are vaccinated. What is that looking like there for you as far as are the borders going to reopen anytime soon?
Yeah, well, the problem in Australia was we pursued the elimination approach, which was brilliant at the start. So we would just jump on this damn thing, lock down, when it came out. And then we have been pretty free. So to be honest, COVID, we haven't had the same, when we have a case of COVID, it's, an outrage in society here, which I'm sure for you guys must sound bizarre, but, that's how we approached it. The problem is with the Delta variant, obviously that approach is struggling now. I think half of Australia is currently in lockdown trying to continue with this eradication approach. And I don't know whether it's going to be successful with Delta and whether we just have to accept that. But the problem for us is obviously the vaccination levels are very low because Australians, there was no risk in the community because we didn't have any cases in the community. So now we're playing catch-up ball. I think from the business client, people trying to run any kind of organisation or performing arts or festivals or anything, it's just that for us, the constant lockdown, not lockdown, lockdown, which could happen at any time, is just like playing Russian roulette. So, we've just come out of a 1-week lockdown, but, who knows, we could be back in one in next week. So trying to navigate around that is pretty tough for everyone, employees, employers. But, we can't complain. Compared to other countries, we haven't had the death tolls. When you're going through stuff like this, you just have to be thankful for the daily good things that come along,
I wonder, even when things do reopen, is there a sense that you'll get those people back?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we would get some, because one of the things here, because we haven't had much COVID, I do know that people coming in go, oh, it's so great once we get through quarantine, we're free. You can actually walk around and live life as normal. So and I think it's actually an opportunity the government has neglected, because if we actually had good quarantine facilities, we could have been taking in huge numbers of international students, for instance, and who could then, unlike their own countries, could have had, 18 months of freedom. What it means, though, is people have had to be far more innovative in this area. And I must admit, there's a little part of me that likes that, because I think HR traditionally, unlike other business disciplines, hasn't been very innovative. If people have if you look at people's sales in a business, if their sales are down 100,000, they go, oh my God, we've got to do something about that. But if they have people problems, they go, oh my God, my people fight, and they don't talk at team meetings, but they do nothing. I had a great example of this when I was consulting to a large beef client, and he complained about his supervisors having issues all the time. And I said to him, well, they fought with all their teams and stuff. And so I said to him, well, what sort of training do you give them, in this kind of area? Do you give them any people training or communication? And he looked at me and he said, we don't do anything. So you can't, with HR, lots of people complain about it all the time, but they never innovate. So I think at least this is an opportunity now to say, what can we do to improve? And I think that's an opportunity for the long term.
Mandy, it's nice to know that regardless of who we talk to and wherever they may be, the problems are very, very, very much the same.
They are. I love the line the beef guy said to me. He goes, Mandy, I've realized we're not in the cattle business. We're in the people business.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. As you've been a chance to be innovative with your client base and with seeing other HR professionals there adjust to this, what do you believe, or what are business leaders telling you is going to be the challenge as things have shifted beyond the labor component? How are you preparing for that, or how do you recommend that HR professionals get ready for that challenge?
I think one of, as well as the hiring, obviously retention, hanging on to people and also keeping them motivated. I've had a lot of calls from past clients where during this pandemic, they've got workforces that are fatigued, that are anxious, that are upset. And one of the things that I keep saying to them is you can never over communicate. I had one and she's going, we're actually doing quite well as a business, but our people are terrified they're going to be sacked. And I said, well, because of the pandemic. And I'm going, well, why are they terrified? Why aren't you communicating? So I think communicating is a really big, even every week if your state or country is going through some pretty dire stuff. And also thinking about, retention, if there's less people that you can hire, thinking about how do we keep the great ones we have. For me, one of the things to play with there is things like time. People are so busy and stressed that time's become a real commodity. If you can actually be a little bit flexible with the way, you manage time, that people can manage time in your business, like the example I gave before, then that's really, really helpful. And I think also articulating better why people should work for you and coming up with extra reasons each month. I had a woman who runs a fish and chip shop down the road, and she's got the best people working for it. It's a lovely, everyone goes there. And I said to her once, how do you get and keep such great people? And she said, well, one of the things she did was she went to all the local businesses in the area and asked for discounts and created a menu card. Someone who's working there can get, 5% off their alcohol at the local liquor shop, or they can get a car service for 10% off, or da-da-da. So, being a bit innovative on how we keep our people, starting to look at the long game here and saying, if we keep our people, if you look at the research, it shows that people that stay with you are far more productive than ones, than if you keep turning over people all the time. So if we can get better at keeping them, then both them and the business will be much happier. And I'm very against all this casualisation of the labour market, because I think that's bad for both people and for business.
I find it interesting. I was just having a conversation about retention earlier today with someone, and we were talking. People keep bringing problems to talent acquisition and recruitment and say, we need more people, we need more people, we need more people. And then you look into it, it's like, do you really need more people coming in the door, or do we need to stop them on the other side? And so trying to reframe some of those conversations to talk about retention and how can we help.
Yes. And one of the things, I consulted to a company. It was actually a big bike company. And they had, at the time, something like 60% staff turnover. And he wanted to talk to me about their training needs. And I said, look, can I be honest, after he talked to me a bit, and I said, I actually think you're wasting your time training these people, because they're all gone within a year. Like, after a year's up, you've lost 60% of your people. You shouldn't be training. You should be improving your hiring skills. So you're hiring people that are better fitted to the culture and the job, and you should be looking at your retention stuff. So it's really interesting how owners and CEOs and stuff, they kind of cherry pick a piece of HR without thinking about the other pieces. One thing that I do find quite funny about COVID is, for years I've been saying to people, to owners when I go into companies, saying, you need to allow people to work a little bit more from home, and they all have said to me for years, look, this is just impossible. There's no way that our people could work from home. And of course, COVID comes along, and within 2 minutes, everyone's working from home. I find that hilarious that, we can't do it. But, now we have to do it, so we'll do it.
Yeah, but only temporarily.
Yeah, that's right.
Mandy, we have gotten to know you recently through our Twitter chat, which we absolutely love that you are up early to participate in that. Tell us how you first found the chat and what keeps you coming back.
Okay, well, I'm so pleased I did find it, just to start off, because I love it. But how it actually happened was, when my second book came out, the publisher, I was a bit of a social media dinosaur, and the publisher commanded me that I had to familiarize myself with social media. So I approached this kind of Twitter beast and said, what do I do, And I started, and someone told me about chats. So I Googled, HR chats, because that's obviously the area I'm interested in, and you guys came up. And I thought, I'll give it a go. I'll just do one. And I think that was, years ago now, a couple of years at least. What I love about you, we just don't have anything like you here in Australia. It's just such a great space for people to just come together. And, as I think John said before, we all have the same problems, And so to brainstorm and come up with ideas, and just to, I like the humour too, you bounce off people, and there's some, great pictures come up. And so for me, it's always on at Monday morning at 9:00. So it's a terrible time, because, I'm supposed to be powering into my work week. But what I do now is I get up, and if I can, I join in with you, and I call it it's like my warm up to start the week. It's just been brilliant. I'm an addict. I think what you guys do is fabulous.
I love it. That's what we want it to be, is that warm up to the week, and we've got you in there. I love it.
Mandy, we've had an opportunity to talk to many guests outside of the United States this year. And something I've added to when we bring somebody from outside, I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of your entire continent, but what do you believe is the biggest misconception people outside of Australia have about the country?
I know this one pretty well, because I have traveled quite a bit. And wherever I go to, people feel that Australia is just full of all these dangerous, poisonous, deadly creatures. And that every time we set out from our door, where, a shark will come and, if we try and have a swim, the sharks are just going to eat us, and the snakes are just... So I think the misconception is how deadly it is, when the reality when you live here is, we might see a snake every now and then, but it's not like we're teeming with them everywhere. So I've had people, my husband and I traveled around America when we first got married for about 6 months. And, everywhere we went, it was like, oh my God, you've got those you've got the most venomous snakes in the world. And, so Yeah. So I'd like to take it on and say I'm a real wildlife warrior, but most of us city dwellers are not, not completely out there like Steve Irwin or anyone like that.
Mandy, one of the things that we've been doing is outsourcing some of our work, and we have our guests come up with a question for an upcoming guest. Sherry Brenton asked, are you more productive in the evening or the morning? And do you think someone can change their schedule and still be successful?
Well, I'm definitely an early bird, as you can tell by my 6 a.m. start this morning. I'm really productive in the mornings. When I was younger, I would have said that I was definitely an early bird. And, by 9 o'clock, my brain just turns to mush. But what I've found is that if you're highly motivated, it doesn't matter when. So just to give you an example, I spent about 5 years writing my first book part-time while I was working. So it was really hard, and I never told anyone I was doing it. And eventually my husband said, you've got to send that manuscript out to someone. And I had 2 little babies, little kids at the time. And so I just sent it off to Random House. I just thought, look, I'll just pick one out of the air and send it off. I got this phone call 3 days later, and they were excited about it. And they said, look, if you can do the last 3 chapters in 3 months, we want it, which, was incredibly exciting for me. But I'm such a slow writer. So 3 months of writing, that was probably a year's work for me. So, here I'd been this religion of I can only work in the mornings was my mantra. And so I just started writing, when the kids had an afternoon sleep, I wrote when they went to bed at night, I wrote. So I found that if you're inspired enough, you can change your habits. But I think you have to be really motivated. And James Clear, I don't know if you guys have had anything to do with James Clear, but I subscribe to his free newsletter. He's like a habits he's like the expert on habits and wrote a best-selling book on it, and he's just brilliant. So I do read some of his stuff about changing habits too. But I think we're all sort of have a leaning towards something.
Well, the person that asked that question is up every day at 3:30.
Oh my God.
Definitely. We agreed. We're morning people, but we're not quite that morning of people.
Yeah, no, that's not my morning.
No.
With that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
This episode of the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast is brought to you by Namely. It's really important to keep your employees engaged, connected, and informed, especially in this competitive job market. Namely is the only all-in-one HR solution everyone on your team will love. It's easy to use and can save your team hours each week. Namely is ideal for mid-sized businesses, whether you have 50 or even 1,000 employees. And with Namely, you'll have one centralized platform to create an employee experience that's seamless, engaging, even boost productivity with features like onboarding, open enrollment, PTO, performance reviews, recognition, and a news feed to keep everyone up to date and interacting no matter where they are. HR professionals love it too, with their HR compliance package, easy payroll processing, HR analytics, and dedicated support. Namely gives you everything your business needs in one intuitive place. To learn more about making the switch to Namely, visit namely.com today. Thanks, Namely, for sponsoring the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. And now, back to the show.
And we are back. Mandy, this is everyone's favorite part of our show, the half-hour question connection. What career did you dream of having when you were a child?
I loved animals as a child, so I really wanted to be a vet. I thought I couldn't imagine anything better than working with animals, day and night. But I think my sort of 7-year-old image of being a vet was actually just sort of cuddling cute cats and dogs. And once I realized that I actually had to do stuff that was like operating on them, and I'm quite squeamish when it comes to blood. So that career path kind of went out the window once I realized it wasn't quite just having fun with the animals.
Not to mention you got all those big snakes.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, we do have snake doctors here. So that's kind of ironic, but we do.
Who's one person you've gained your network in the last year that you think more people should know?
It's a girl called Yasmin, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, but her surname is Grigaliunas. She started up a charity called the World's Biggest Garage Sale over here in Australia. And what she does is she gets large companies, like we have a sort of an office depot over here. They donate their seconds to her, and she employs all these vulnerable people and repurposes them all. And in fact, she's been so successful that now the Office Depot company actually buys the trendy recovered chairs and fixed up chairs back off her and sells them in their business. And she's worked so hard. She has such a vision and a mission, and she makes so many vulnerable people happy just by giving them work that I just think, people like that are just absolutely amazing. And she's done it, really hard. She doesn't make much money, and she works, incredible hours to do it. So I think a big shout out to Yasmin, because I think there's very few people that really follow through and make something happen like that.
That's very cool. Mandy, how do you maintain balance?
I'm a big believer in the bucket theory. I don't know if you guys have heard the bucket theory, but the bucket theory is that, our mental and physical well-being, we put stress and, we might eat badly and stuff, and we fill our bucket up. And once the bucket's full, then we overflow and we have a big meltdown. So, the example is, when you've been working hard and you go on holiday and you get the flu straight away, it's because your bucket's full. Once I kind of learned this at a conference a number of years ago. So now what I do is I do things to empty my bucket before it gets full. So I do I am quite a sort of a social exerciser. I walk every day and I swim and that kind of thing. But I also try and do things like catch up with friends. And I think this has become so important with COVID, is to have a bit of a laugh is just the best mental and physical health exercise you can do. So really just whatever empties your bucket is my belief.
How do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
What I try to do, so I've got I run this 6-month People and Culture Accelerator program, which is to kind of teach people how to do this innovative side of HR, because HR often gets bogged down on all the compliance and administration and stuff. And this bit which actually makes people's lives better, where, people at work are better, is kind of neglected. So I do this course, and every course I do, I give a free place for the 6 months to someone who would not normally be able to afford it. So usually it's a not-for-profit or something like that. So I do that. And also it's kind of gone off a bit because of COVID. But the other thing I do is because as I travel, I speak a lot at conferences and things, and I talk to a lot of people. And so I meet really interesting HR people. So what I used to do before COVID was organise lunches where we just meet up for an hour. And it's kind of like doing what you guys do, but doing it face to face, where I would connect people that didn't know each other, and we'd have these great chats about all sorts of different aspects of HR. So it was kind of like one of the highlights for me was all the, just people would come along. They just pay for their own lunch and we'd all just get together. But it was a great way to kind of share what was happening in the world and in the world of HR. Of course, that's much harder now. So that's where your kind of thing is brilliant, because you can keep doing it even during COVID.
Most definitely. Mandy, what is your favorite movie?
Look, I'm a bit of a sci-fi and fantasy person, so I have to say things like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm just a fan, so they'd have to be my faves.
What's the first concert you remember attending?
It was probably when I was at uni. I was pretty poor as a uni student, so I did 4 years. Didn't have any money for concerts at that time, but I remember the Hoodoo Gurus was a really big Australia band, and they came to play at my university for free. So now I look back and go, wow, we saw them for free. And, a few years later, they were like a world band. So that was pretty exciting for me. Funnily enough, it's probably the best concert I've been to,
Not a name I've heard in a long time. Wow.
Yeah. Showing my age a bit now.
What was the last show that you binge watched?
I really like faction, when someone takes something real but turns it into sort of a fictional account of it. So I loved The Serpent, which was Charles Subraj in Thailand in the 1970s, and he was actually a serial killer of backpackers. But because I travelled a lot, mine was sort of the early 90s, but I did that whole backpacker overland from sort of Asia to London for a year. It really resonated with me because, you sort of look at when you were younger and you go, wow, if I'd accidentally met him, how my life could have changed. So, I found that quite fascinating. And the fact that he just did this and no one, these backpackers and a lot of Americans actually, I think and Canadians as well. But, these kids would just turn up, dead, and no one pieced it together for years. And he just, he was just taking all their money and So really fascinating. And also, because it's set in the 70s, great music and stuff as well. So a bit of a blast from the past as well.
Is that an Australian production? I'm not familiar. BBC
The Serpent. Actually, I don't think it is. It's a Netflix.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know. It got really a lot of press here before it came out, maybe because, I know even when I first went traveling, my mother was terrified and said to me, because it had been found out at that point that he'd been doing this, watch out and never, don't friendly strangers that just, they could be a serial killer. And so it was kind of a sort of part of the Australian psyche, I think, at the time.
Mandy, what's a hobby or a thing you really like to do that may surprise people?
Oh, this is quite hard, actually, because you kind of go, what would surprise people? I did, when I was younger, I rode a motorbike for about 7 years before, but then I had kids and I had to give it up because I just thought, it's just so I love my bike, and actually my kids have now just left home and I'm like, I think I need another motorbike. I'm also a bit of an eco-warrior. We moved into where I live now. We're reasonably close to the city, but it's sort of in a rural valley. So I do grow my own organic fruit and stuff. So in my spare time, when I'm not doing HR social hour chats and working. So.
Well, finally, Mandy, as we said, we are crowdsourcing and getting some questions from our guests for future guests. So if you could ask the next guest of the podcast any question, what would it be?
I think I'd say to them, if you had a magic wand and you could do anything, what's the one thing you would change or do to make work better for everyone? So that would be my question, because I think people are the heart and soul of every business and the profit of every business. And I don't think we appreciate that enough. So I think it's a question that I would like to see our politicians and our business leaders thinking about as well.
The question's now in the book. I think it's a great one. Wendy, I think we may have to add that one to our answers the next time we do Ask Us Anything, because that's a great one and a lot to think of there. Again, can't thank you enough for taking part of your early day, and hopefully this maybe gets you a little more excited to get out there and address those issues that you do so well. Thank you for your time and for being part of the community. And for being in the future. It's a lot of fun. And I know I've learned a lot today. A lot of our listeners are probably connected with you, but if they're not, best way to reach you out there, how to get the books, anything and everything they should know.
Yeah. So the best way, thank you so much for having me, first of all. Best way to contact me is my website, www.mandyjohnson, mandyjohnson.co. It's got all my stuff on it. All my blogs and everything, but also if you want to contact me, it's got a contact thing. I'm very approachable. I love talking about HR. It's got all my Twitter handles and that kind of thing. So I'd love to connect with you. And thank you so much for having me on. You have warmed up my day. It's great. So really appreciate it.
We will have that in the show notes for sure. And then Wendy, how about you? Best way for listeners to find you out there?
Best way is on my blog, mydailyjourney.com, daily D as in dog, AILEY. And of course, the second and fourth Sunday of each month, you will find me on Twitter at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as part of our twice monthly Twitter chat. And how about you, John?
Once again, thanks to Namely for sponsoring this episode for the month of August. We really do appreciate it. Namely.com to learn more there. And as for me, johnthurman.com for all things John Thurman for the show, hrsocialhourpodcast.podbean.com. Listen, review, share, follow whatever platform, wherever you are on the globe right now. Just hit that follow on that platform you're on, and you'll get every new episode as it comes out. International listeners, we have international guests.
Yes.
This is proof positive. Mandy's in the future, and you can be on the show too. Contact us because it's a lot easier for you to get to us than it is for us to get to you. Mandy can tell you it's hopefully fairly painless. We just got to figure out the time zone. Again, Mandy, really do appreciate it. And so for the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast, I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. And as always, be sure to connect,
give back, and network. Take care, everybody.
We'll see you soon.